Hello, and welcome to the live training, Respectful, Responsible, and Engaged. 5 steps to end the battles and get your students excited to learn. In this training, we're going to be going through, just as I said, 5 steps. And in particular, some of the things you're going to be learning are some ways to earn your students' respect, how to easily build relationships with challenging students, how to get your students excited to learn, how to help your students take responsibility for their own learning, how to end the arguments in your classroom, and so much more. I can't wait to get into all of this with you. While we're waiting to get started, we're going to start in about 5 minutes here. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, I would love it if you could introduce yourself and share just a little bit about where you teach, how long you've been teaching, and possibly where you're from. So we would love to hear from you. Where do you teach? What do you teach? How long have you been teaching? Anything else that you'd like to share? Welcome to Joyce and Abby, our first 2 joining us. So excited to have all of you guys here. You can also do me a huge favor. Let's check and make sure the sound is working. So if you can hear me, if you can just type in the chat box, yes, I hear you. That's super helpful so that we know everything is working and we're not having any issues here. Welcome from Canada, Florida, Willoughby Hills, Ohio. Yes. Let's see. Oh, it's going so fast. I can't keep up. Yes, you can hear me. That's wonderful. Okay, good. Seems like we are on the right track. For those of you that are just joining us, we're introducing ourselves in the chat box. We'd love to hear how long have you been teaching and what age and subject do you teach? And if you want to share where you're from too, we'd love to hear that as well. This is the training Respectful, Responsible, and Engaged. And if you happened to join us last night on our Classroom Management Solutions training, this is a completely different training. So this is completely different and new material. There'll be a couple things I shared last night that I'll share again tonight, but for the most part, this will be new. And we really want to focus on what does it look like to build that classroom culture where students are respectful, where they want to learn, and where they take responsibility for themselves and for their own learning. And there is so much that we could say about this topic, but so we're gonna go fast tonight. I'm gonna give you guys a lot of strategies. Obviously, we're just gonna cover as much as we can in 1 hour. So I'm really excited to get into some of these strategies with you. All right, we got just a couple minutes left before we get started officially. Once again, if you're just joining us, feel free to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you teach and how long you've been teaching. So good to have all of you here. This is awesome. It's great. Welcome to Allison and Melinda and Susie. Got kindergarten, we've got middle school, we've got teachers from California and from Oregon and New Jersey, just all over the place. Isn't it so cool that we can connect here online with teachers literally from all across the country and sometimes even around the world? Time zones kind of mess with that a little bit, but it's so exciting to have everyone here with us. That's awesome. You know, as we're getting ready to start here in just about 1 or 2 more minutes now, I have to tell you, I'm really excited about this training because we talk a lot at Teach for the Heart about classroom management, which I believe is so important, right? You have to have control before you can really do anything with your class. But I'm excited in this training to take things to the next level and say, okay, you know, assuming you have a basic level of control, how can we earn our students' respect? How can we build those relationships? How can we help students get excited to learn, take responsibility for their own learning? And I'm really excited to dive into these strategies with you tonight. So I'm sure we're going to have more people joining us as we get going here, but we're going to go ahead and get started because I know you're busy and we don't want to waste your time. Just so you know, this training will be about an hour long. I might stay on a little extra afterwards to answer questions for those that have them, but we will have a Q&A time at the end, Lord willing, and then it'll be about an hour, and we replay available if technology cooperates. So sometimes I talk quickly. We're going to go through a lot of strategies. So if you feel like, man, you know, I missed something, I want to hear that again, you can rewatch the training. Matthew asked, is yesterday's classroom management training available to go back and watch? It is. It's at teachfortheheart.com/training. You can watch that one as well. It's available on demand now for about a couple weeks. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This is for those that can't hear me, so they can know they need to check their sound settings. Hopefully everyone can hear me. All right, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like getting your students to respect each other and you is a bit of an uphill battle? Have you ever felt like you're forcing your students almost to learn against their will? Do you ever wish that you and your students could actually work together for a change? Well, that is our goal today. If so, you are not alone. Check out the comments. Yes, everyone's agreeing. And I've certainly felt like this as well. So today, we're going to talk about strategies to combat those challenges. We're going to talk about 5 steps to help you earn your students' respect, build strong relationships, classroom community, and a teamwork mentality amongst your class. Engage students so that they're excited to learn, and help them take responsibility for their own learning. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Linda Cardamus, and I am the founder of Teach for the Heart. And I'd love to hear, it's really helpful for me, if you can let me know how many of you have been around Teach for the Heart for a while? How many of you, this is your first time, you know, on an event with us or even doing anything with us? That's really helpful for me to kind of see who's new, who's been around for a while. That's really helpful. If you're not familiar with us here at Teach for the Heart, we have lots of courses. So I'm the creator of Classroom Management 101, as well as our brand new course, Beyond Classroom Management. I'm also the author of Create Your Dream Classroom, Take Heart and Teach, as well as the Teach Uplifted Devotions for Teachers. And it's so cool to see. We've got a whole bunch of people that have been around for a while, and a whole bunch of people that this is your first time. So if this is your first time with us at Teach for the Heart, welcome. And if you've been here a while, we're so glad. It's so great to have you back. Thanks so much for being part of Teach for the Heart. All right. We're about to get started, so you might want to grab a pen and paper to take some notes. But before we get started, if you don't mind, I'm going to pause and just say a word of prayer. It's very helpful to me to do that. I know it's encouraging to some of you as well. So I'm just going to pause and pray real quick. Father, thank you so much for these teachers. Thank you that they are here. Thank you that they care about their classroom. I pray that you will use this time, that it will be just such a helpful time for the teachers, that they will walk away with practical strategies that they can implement right away. I pray that you'll give me the words to say, that it will be encouraging and helpful, and that you'll work with the technology and help it cooperate with us tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, let's dive right in. So, step 1, earn your students' respect. Okay, this is easier said than done, right? So let's talk about, what does this mean? If we want to create a classroom where students are respectful, responsible, and engaged, the first thing we have to do is earn our students' respect. So one of the fastest ways to lose their respect and thus totally ruin the culture of our classroom is this, right? When things are, well, just a little bit out of control. And if this is where you're at, if you're feeling like this, then I do want you to know that you're not alone. Like I said, we had a whole training last night. I'll share that with you in a minute, that we can go back and help you with this. But let's cover a few things right now. If we want to earn their respect, we have to create a conducive learning environment for students to learn in, right? So we need to have an environment where students can learn. If it's chaos, it's not going to go very well. So one of the things we want to do here is we need to have high expectations for our students. We need to deal with problems as they come up. We need to be consistent. Now, we talked a whole bunch about this on the training last night. So if you're looking at this and going, man, Linda, like I'm stuck here. This is where I'm struggling. I want you to write down the link, teachfortheheart.com/training. teachfortheheart.com/training. And I want you later, tomorrow, to go back and watch that training, because we go into way more detail about what this looks like. And we don't have time for it tonight. But the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because I just want to point out to you that having some type of basic level of control is the key. You have to start there. If you don't start there, all the other things you try to do are kind of going to just come crumbling down. So having high expectations, holding your students accountable, dealing with problems, this should not go against your classroom culture. This should be the foundation of a good classroom culture. Does that make sense? So let's talk a little bit more, a couple more practical tips on this earning respect and creating a calm classroom. One is continue to work on procedures. So whether you are, whether you are struggling or whether things are going pretty well, procedures is something that we almost always have to keep coming back to. It's so easy to just let procedures go, right? And pretty soon things digress into chaos. We talked more about this last night, but when you teach procedures, you not only want to tell students what you expect of them, you have to practice. You have to practice it with them. You have to correct what's going wrong. And if needed, you might even have to redo it. You might have to practice it multiple times for them to get it. So it's worth it to spend time on procedures so that you can help develop that calm classroom where students can respect you. Another tip, set rules you can actually enforce. One of the best ways to do this, and Love and Logic talks about this a lot, is by using I statements rather than you statements. So in other words, instead of saying, I expect you to do this, 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 and this, a rule such as, I give full credit for papers that are turned in on time, you can enforce that because it's about what you do, right? Or I call on students who raise their hand quietly. That's about what you do, right? You can actually enforce that. So it's really important to think through what are my rules? Can I actually enforce them, right? And pick rules that you can actually enforce and follow through. And just another point under here is don't argue. Now, you might say, okay, this is easier said than done. But actually, the more you think about it, arguing requires two people to argue. And a lot of times we deal with this so much, right? Where students are arguing with us. And I remember one group in particular, I would just get in these just long discussions with them where they would argue with me about all this stuff. And I would just entertain their arguments, and just got worse and worse and worse. It was, to be honest, a bit of a disaster. And the simplest strategy to curb arguments is just don't argue. If you don't argue back, it ends the argument. So you need to have some type of go-to phrase. I love you too much to argue, or, but what did I say? Where it's just the end, right? You're simply going about and talking. You're just simply ending the argument because you're not engaging in it with them. I see here real quick, if you are, I see some of you guys in the chat, if you are saying, okay, man, like this is, this isn't helping me, this is way too high level. We did a whole training on this last night where we went into way more specifics. It's called Classroom Management Solutions, and it's at teachfortheheart.com/training. So definitely write that down. Check that out if you need more details on this. We also have, there's the URL right there. We also have a full course, Classroom Management 101, which I talked more about last night. You can find that under courses at the top of our website. I'll share a little bit more about it later. Okay, so let's make it personal. What's one tweak you can make to improve your classroom environment? You may or may not have anything so far based on, you might already kind of have this part down, but is there anything that you can identify? If there is, go ahead and put it in the chat. Share what's one tweak that you might want to make right now to improve your classroom environment going forward. By the way, you can feel free to add in questions at any time. I'm going to answer most of them at the end, but I'll try to answer one or two kind of at the end of each section here. All right, what if you have students that are okay with not answering any questions and being disengaged? Okay, we're going to get into more strategies about how to pull students in here coming up soon. Looking forward to talking about that more. Okay, love these ideas you guys have about tweaks. Awesome, keep sharing them. That's great. All right, as you guys are sharing yours, we're gonna go on to step 2. Step 2, gonna build strong relationships, classroom community, and a teamwork mentality. Now, there are so many ways to do this. So many. But I picked some of my favorite strategies to share with you guys tonight. The first is called the 2x10 strategy. We shared this last night. This is particularly helpful with your most challenging students. Okay, so imagine that one or two most challenging students that you're always butting heads with. That's who this strategy is for. And it's designed to build a relationship with them so that you have some rapport built up and it lessens the discipline issues. And when you do need to deal with them, you have that relationship. So what you do is you simply talk to them for 2 minutes a day. That's where the 2 comes from. For 10 days, so 2x10. And you can talk to them about anything. It doesn't have to be school related. In fact, it's probably better if it's not school related. So you're simply talking to them for 2 minutes a day for 10 days. Someone asked me to repeat step 2. Here's step 2. So the 2x10, and once again, this is very informal. You don't set a formal appointment with them. You just stop by their locker or catch them at lunch, or just stop by their desk and just say something. It doesn't even have to be a full 2 minutes, but just simply making some effort to connect with them. So the 2x10 strategy, I've heard so many great things. Like, it's just so simple, but just that making that effort to build that relationship can be amazingly transformative. Another key way to build those relationships in classroom community is by demonstrating empathy to our students. And here's the key. Accountability and empathy have to go together in order to create impact in our students' lives. So ask yourself this question. What is my tone like when I have to enforce consequences? I don't know about you, but when I have to enforce consequences or get on students for something, a lot of times I get really matter of fact. You didn't have it on time, so it's like, I just get really matter of fact. But it's so much more powerful if instead of having this matter of fact, or even worse, angry tone, if we have an empathetic response. So remember, this does not change. We're still holding them accountable, but that must have been hard. Well, I wish it was in on time, but it's not. Just kind of having that empathetic response can make a big difference. Here's another question. What's your default response when students complain, give excuses, or argue? Do you get defensive? Do you want to fight with them? That's the natural response, right? But if instead we can have an empathetic response and then stick to our guns, once again, the accountability plus empathy equals that impact. Leading with empathy shows students that we are on the same team, even as we have to enforce our classroom rules, expectations, and consequences. Now, you might be thinking, okay, what does this actually look like? Well, it can be really helpful to pick a go-to empathetic phrase that you use often. So, for example, it could be, oh, that's tough, or how sad, or even just a sound like, Jerry says their response is, that's unfortunate, right? So you're not, it's just a great way to respond anytime the student's upset about something, right? Oh, that's unfortunate. Here's what we're going to do about it, though, right? And it just reframes the way that we're talking with them. And once again, helps build that culture that we are on the same team. Here's another strategy underneath this topic of building relationships and community, and that is morning meetings. And I'm curious, how many of you have ever tried a regular class meeting or a morning meeting in your class? I'd love to hear that. Now, morning meetings in elementary typically take place in the morning. In secondary, it's going to look different because you don't have time for a full-out meeting every single class period, obviously, right? But this can be great for class advisory or homeroom, or if you have a blocked class, maybe once a week, or even if you have a regular class, it could still be worth it to take 10 minutes once a week and do some type of meeting. So in a morning meeting, like I said, we could do a whole webinar on, and there are whole webinars, whole courses just on morning meetings. So my point here is not to completely teach you this strategy. It's to give you just a high level overview of what it's like. And we talk more about how to actually do it in our course Beyond Classroom Management. And so if you're interested in it, you can go deeper into the strategy. So in a typical morning meeting, students meet in a circle and they greet each other, they share about a certain topic, and they practice skills, all kinds of skills, academic skills, social skills, emotional skills, communication skills, leadership skills. It really is a great integration of all these different aspects. So as I said, students are learning how to communicate, they're learning social skills, and they're practicing academic skills all at the same time. And doing this in this way really builds a community of mutual respect, both because the class is working together and also because you're actively teaching it. You know, we can't expect students to respect each other, to get along, to be on the same team if we don't actively teach them what that looks like. So the morning meeting is a great format to focus on those skills. So that's the question you might want to consider. Look, you might really want to jot this. If you're not familiar with this strategy, you might want to jot it down and look it up some more and just consider, would this be a worthwhile investment of classroom time? Because it is an investment, right? To take 15 minutes every day, every morning, or maybe 10 minutes once a week in a middle school, high school class. That is an investment of your time. And time is so valuable. But if it's going to help your students be more engaged, if it's going to build those communication skills, those social skills, if it's going to help them connect what they're learning to everyday life, if it's going to eliminate classroom issues and get your students engaged, it very well might be. And in many of you that have done it, I'd love to hear if you think it's a worthwhile investment. I suspect you do, or you wouldn't still be doing it. As I said, in secondary, it's going to look different, right? It's probably not going to be every day. But if you have a homeroom or a class advisory, it is definitely a great format. Check it out and look into it more for secondary. And also, you could try doing it just once a week or a little longer if you have a blocked class. Okay, those were 3 strategies. We talked about the 2x10, we talked about empathy, we talked about morning meetings. Do you want to try or find out more information about any of these strategies? If so, type it in the chat box, and I also want you to write it in your notes. as you can see, based on what we've done so far, we're throwing a lot of different strategies at you today. And the goal is to walk away with maybe 2 or 3 that you actually want to implement, and then a whole list of ideas to maybe try later, okay? So you're not necessarily going to implement all of these tomorrow. It would probably be too much and too overwhelming. But definitely be jotting down the ideas that pique your interest, kind of make like a running list of them, and then be highlighting, starring, identifying which are your favorites that you most want to try. Does that make sense? Awesome. See lots of people saying 2 by 10, finding out more about morning meetings. Yes, this is awesome. Empathy for sure. All right, so step 1, we said that we are going to earn our students' respect. Step 2, we're going to build strong relationships, classroom community, and a teamwork mentality. Step 3, we are going to engage our students. Once again, so many ways we can do this. I'm going to share some of my favorite strategies. Let me ask you this, though. I want you to think back over the past year or so. Can you think of a time when your students were legitimately excited to learn? If you can, I have to tell you, wasn't that a cloud 9 experience? It is just the best feeling. And it's so exciting when our students are actually excited about something that we're doing in class. And our goal is to see that happen more and more often. So here's a question that we can start with. Who does the most work in your class? Is it you running around doing everything, always lecturing, and students kind of just sit there and watch and listen? Or are your students actively involved? Because here's the truth. The one who is working is the one who is learning. And most of the time, you already know the material. So the students really need to be involved in order to learn, right? So we need to make sure that your students are getting actively involved. Now, with this question, though, there are 2 different pitfalls that we can fall into that we want to avoid. So pitfall number 1 is a classroom that is all lecture. And I've been in some of these, and maybe this is some of you guys, it's your current style, where literally all you do all day, every day, it's a lecture, and students take notes, and that's it. That's your whole class. If that's your whole class, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to give you some strategies here in a little bit to break out of that. Because yes, taking notes is doing something, but it's still very passive and you're doing all the working. And so you don't want it to be literally all lecture all day, every day. At the same time, however, pitfall number 2, sometimes teachers go the opposite direction and they say, okay, well then I'm just going to give them stuff to do. And they completely neglect direct instruction. That's a problem too. So I see some of you guys saying 60-40, it's a split. It needs to be a split, because what you do not want to do is just say, okay, well, if I want the students to be working, I'm just going to put together a packet of 20 worksheets that they need to do, and they can look up the stuff in the book for themselves, and they can do it all for themselves, and I'll just hand them the packet and they'll be working, so they'll be learning. Not so much, right? Then why are you even there? And that's not setting them up for success, and that's not engaging either. So what you need is a combination of direct instruction and then students applying and practicing what they've learned. So if you have a balance of that, if you have both direct instruction and students applying, practicing, you're on the right track. And we're going to talk about how to make both of those aspects more engaging. So let's talk about direct instruction. To make direct instruction more engaging, first thing is very simple. Make it interesting, right? This is kind of like a duh, but do you let your passion shine through? If you teach history, do your students know that you love history? If you teach math, can your students tell that you geek out on this stuff? Let that passion shine through. It really is contagious. Keep in mind, though, the goal isn't necessarily to make your classroom super fun. Now, some of you, if I don't know if anyone is anyone out there the fun teacher? I was never like this fun teacher. It's just not my personality. But you don't have to be crazy fun to be engaging. Engaging means you're thought-provoking, you're relevant, your students are interested, and they can be just as interested because of a challenge, because something is thought-provoking, than because it's fun. Does that make sense? So if you're thinking engaging means I have to be all crazy and like silly and funny, not necessarily. Focus on being thought-provoking and relevant. One way to do this is to ask yourself, when you're planning a lesson, ask yourself the so what question. So what? Why do we care about this information? How is it relevant? What should students do with this, right? And so ask yourself that question, because your students are asking that question. So you want to ask it ahead of time and answer it, and then incorporate that into your lesson. Another important key to making direct instruction engaging is to get your students involved. And I'm going to share a few ways to do that. I'd love for you guys to share in the chat some other strategies. How do you get your students involved? A simple way to do this is incorporate writing. Now, obviously, you might have students already taking notes, but you can supplement this with really good writing questions. So, for example, let's say you want to have a class discussion about a certain topic. Rather than just launching into the discussion, give your students 60 seconds to answer the question on a sheet of paper or in their notes. And now that everyone's written something down, you have something to start with and call on to have a better class discussion. You can also pause your lesson all the time and just give quick writing prompts, like write down one thing you just learned. If you're pretend that your friend is absent today and they asked you, what's the most important thing you learned today? What would you say? And you're actually having them stop and write this down. Also, it could just be a question relevant to your material, right? Pull out a thought-provoking question, give students 2 minutes to write a response right in the middle of your lecture. So you're getting students involved. That's much more active than just taking notes or copy, especially if they're just copying notes that you're giving them. Another strategy you might consider trying is micro lectures and partner sharing. This is really popularized by whole brain teaching. I'd love to hear anyone use this strategy. Basically, the way this works is that you break up your big lesson. This is especially helpful if you're going to be like teaching, for a longer, you got a longer lecture, maybe if it's even a whole class period. You break it up into micro lectures. Now, what that means is you just teach one concept at a time, which you do anyhow. But after each concept, each 2 to 3 minutes, you stop and have students turn to their partner, someone right around them, and share what they just learned. So basically recap it in their own words. Teach the person next to them what they just learned. And you walk around, turn and talk is another word for it. And you walk around and you listen for misconceptions. You listen if they're correctly understanding it. But it really gets them involved and making them active participants in the lecture, right? Of course, you need some classroom management you need to have call and response sayings. You need to be able to re-engage them. We talk more about that in Beyond Classroom Management. But micro lectures and partner sharing can be super effective. It works tremendously well through middle school, and it can even work well in high school as long as you practice it and make it relevant to them. It can still work really, really well. Another thing you can try is adding movement to your direct instruction. So having students get up, move around whenever possible. You can get creative in how can we get students, actually getting up and doing something. So those are some strategies for direct instruction. What about practice or application? How can we make practice time more engaging? A WBT is whole brain teaching. Whole brain teaching. If you haven't heard at all about that, that's another great one to look into. We have some more information at teachfortheheart.com/wholebrain, and we talk about it more in Beyond Classroom Management too. Okay, let's talk about how to make practice engaging. So, first thing, Well, the biggest way to kill practice engagement, and when I say practice, I'm talking in particularly like you're practicing a skill, like it's math class, you're practicing a skill, you're practicing writing, right? You're working on these things that need practice. One of the biggest way to make practice unengaging is to give students something to do that they don't feel confident about, that they don't have the tools to succeed at, right? That's the fastest way to kill engagement, because they'll just be frustrated and they'll give up before they even try. So it's very important that you teach the skill first and you practice it together before you ask students to do it on their own. That's really important. If you are just, if you can't just take a math class and just be like, here you go, figure it out. It's not going to work well. A lot of times, though, teachers, you might find yourself, I am teaching the skill, but I go right from teaching the skill to having them do it on their own. And if that's you, you're still missing that middle piece where you practice it together. So you want to teach the skill, then do a few together, and then set the students free to work on their own. Now, what do they do to practice? Well, you can use worksheets, especially as a math teacher. There's lots of practice. There's nothing wrong with worksheets. However, when we can use an engaging activity that grabs their attention, that can be way more powerful than a worksheet. And so we want to do that when possible. And I'm just going to share here one of the strategies that I love is called quiz trade. But while I'm sharing about that, I'm going to give you this URL here. It's a good one to write down. This is an article we posted recently about that gives specific ways that you can replace worksheets with an engaging activity easily. So you can find a lot of strategies right there. But one of my favorites is called quiz trade, and this comes from Kagan Learning. And so basically what you do is you take whatever you want to practice. Now it could be, or review. So this could be review questions. It could be, not super long math problems, but it could be shorter problems. And you give each student one card. And the card has a question on the front and an answer on the back. You can make them ahead of time, or you can have the students make their own. And so each student has one card. And what you do is everyone stands up and they pair off with someone around them. They quiz each other. So first student quizzes the second on their card. The other student quizzes them back on their card. And then they trade. Quiz, trade cards. After they trade cards, they look for a new partner. And they quiz each other and trade cards. Look for a new partner, quiz each other, trade cards. And this goes on for as much time as you have. The students are, I love doing this. I actually did this fall with 10th graders, and it worked so great. So it works all the way across the age spectrums. It was very engaging, but they were really practicing. It was not distracting to the actual practice. So that was one of my favorite. I tried a lot of these activities, and I share a lot of them at that link, but this was one of my favorite ones. All right, so we talked about how to make direct instruction engaging, how to make practice engaging. How about applying what you're learning? Do students just learn about things in your class, or do they actually do something with what they're learning? This is especially relevant in classes like history or science, foreign language. Are they just learning about things, or are they doing something? Remember that we remember what we do so much more than something we just read or hear about, right? So now keep in mind, this is not projects for projects' sake. That is not what I'm advocating. My friend Jennifer Gonzalez from Cult to Pedagogy tells this story about this class that they were learning about Greece. So the teacher had them spend 2 weeks creating a Grecian urn. Right? This is not art class. This is history class, right? And so they spent weeks creating this Grecian urn. It was very hands-on, but how much learning took place? Certainly not 2 weeks worth of learning. Okay, so doing a project for the sake of doing a project, that is not at all what we're saying to do. But what you want to do instead is ask yourself, what would help my students better grasp and remember this concept? So simple example. Let's say you're studying the phases of the moon, right? And you even get out maybe you even get out, the moon and the earth, and you have all the whole diagrams and you're doing a 3D model and everything. But wouldn't a simple application be, let's actually for a month, like have students go home and look at the moon and come back and tell me what phase it is. And let's just talk about it every day for 2 minutes and actually track the moon, right? Very simple, but you're actually applying what you're doing. Now, if this sounds overwhelming to you, remember, start out small. This could be a quick writing activity, right? Something like, let's say you're in history. What would George Washington have tweeted about this event, right? That's so simple. It's so fast. You can just take 2 minutes, have students write down, what would George Washington have tweeted about this event? And it's engaging, though, and it's applying what they've learned in a way that's relevant to them. Another way to start out small is just small group discussions. Have students pair up and discuss something in a small group. Or simple application activities. Like I said, like studying the phases of the moon, they can be simple. You don't have to start out tomorrow with project-based learning. Okay, you can start out really small with finding little ways to apply what you're learning. A final thought in this section about engaging your students is help your students be successful. I will tell you, if students are doing well in your class, if they feel confident, if they feel like they can do it, they're going to be so much more engaged. If they feel defeated, if they feel like I'm just bad at this class, I don't get it, I'm confused, that kills engagement. So give clear explanations. Really focus on really explaining the concepts clearly. When you give projects, scaffold them. In other words, give clear steps and a clear process. Don't just say, okay, here's the project, figure it out. Even in your upper grades, you want to give clear steps, right? First you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this. Even if they're doing a lot of the research on their own, there should be clear steps for them. Otherwise, they're going to be lost. Just another practical tip, make sure your assessments, your tests, your quizzes match what you've taught and practiced. It is so discouraging and unengaging for students when everything you do in class, they feel like they're tracking with it, and then they get the test and they're like, what is this? So if you're using a test from the curriculum, make sure you really talk about all the things that are on the test, or you tweak the test, right? One or the other. It really needs to match. Okay, like I said, a lot of strategies there. Pick out one. Look at some of the ones we just talked about. What's one way that you can better engage your students? Write it down on your notes and share it in the comments here. And we'd love to hear what you think. Let's see. Someone asked, just got a couple questions real quick before we go on to the next one. What about WBT? That's whole brain teaching. How do you get students to do science, say moon phases at home? I had maybe 20% come prepared when I did so. So this is like a little bit of a bigger question. Obviously, you could tie it in with your homework policy, however you handle homework. But I guess I would just say, try, if this is a big problem for you, structure your project in a way where it's, especially if it's younger students and the parents have to be involved, structure it in a way where it will still work if not all the students do it. So for example, in this example, if not everyone saw the moon last night, you can still say, maybe you take a picture of it. This is what the moon looks like last night. Did you see it? Oh, you missed it, and kind of try to, especially if you're doing a longer project like that, draw them into it, right? And make it so that they didn't necessarily have to see it every day to be relevant. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's just one thought there. Obviously, we could talk a whole thing about homework, which I have some articles that we can get into later if we have time. All right, step 3 was engage your students. Step 4, help students take responsibility for their own learning and actions. So, obviously, our goal is that our students are going to take ownership, right? And we spend a lot of time as teachers trying to encourage them, trying to get them involved, trying to help them. But at some point, if they're going to be successful, they have to take ownership and responsibility for their own learning, as well as their actions and behavior. So how can we do this? Here are some strategies. Well, first of all, it is super important that we believe in our students. Let's just be honest for a second, okay? Because we have all been here. How often does it happen when you assume your students are going to fail before you even start? Now, this is born of sad experience, right? But it's so easy to get jaded and just assume, like why am I even bothering? Like I know this is not. Here's the thing though. It is a totally self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't believe in them, it is for sure not going to happen. So when you're having trouble believing in them, think about their potential. Believe in their potential, even if they're not there now. I mean, think back, right? So many of us did dumb stuff as kids, right? And think about all the successful people that were horrible in school, right? There is so much potential in these kids. We have to focus sometimes on that and act on that belief, even if you don't see the results now. So this is something intangible, but it is important because it totally affects our interactions. We have to choose to believe in our students, even when we doubt, if that makes sense. It's a choice to choose to believe in them. All right. Separate strategy, but definitely ties together. Let natural consequences teach your students. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place for actual like discipline plans and set in stone consequences. This is not in opposition to this, that you can have both. But it's really important that when natural consequences arise, let them teach. So we don't have to be afraid of our students making mistakes or bad choices. Sometimes we really try to control everything and we try to prevent mistakes, try to prevent bad choices at all costs. But what happens then is we just end up butting heads with the students, and honestly, mistakes is often how we learn, right? Making mistakes and then realizing that was a bad idea. So we can't be afraid of students making a mistake, of making a bad choice, of things turning out poorly. When they do, however, when they make a mistake or a bad choice, we have to enforce the natural consequence. We cannot bail them out. And I will tell you, I am guilty sometimes of this. I feel like I want to bail out my kids or my students. I feel bad, right? But when we do that, we totally negate the effect of the cause and effect, right? We totally ruin the opportunity to help them learn responsibility. So, for example, a student doesn't work far enough ahead on their project. You've worked with them the whole time, right? You gave them chance after chance. You've shown them, you've worked with them. Their project is late. As a result, their grade is docked. They were going to get an A and now they have a B, or they were going to get a B and now they have a C, or they were going to get a C and now they have a D, right? Okay, so it's affected their grade. Do we have to bail them out? No. Don't feel like I have to give them extra credit, and I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that. I have to adjust their grade and sometimes they need to learn from the natural consequence. So I'm not saying never to give grace, right? But I'm saying that we need to be careful not to always bail our students out, to let the natural consequences teach. So here's an example. Let's say, like I said, that a student doesn't complete a project, right? They don't have it. Sometimes what we want to do is give them 5 more chances and do it with them and take them to reset, whatever. We are killing ourselves to have them get this project done. But what if we simply let the natural consequence ensue, right? What happens when a student doesn't complete a project in your class? Do they get a 0? Do they have to stay from there needs to be something. You need to have some type of consequence, but just let that teach. Let that be the reality. If it lowers their grade in the upper grades, it lowers their grade, right? If they have to miss this special time in class to work on it, that's what has to happen. Whatever's appropriate for the age of your students. So let the natural consequences teach. This can be effective for academics. This can be effective in a lot of areas. And we talk way, way, way more about what this actually looks like in Beyond Classroom Management. Another strategy underneath helping students take responsibility, is to guide students to solve their own problems. I see some requests for some more examples. Ask for that in the Q&A. I'm happy to go back and give some more examples, but I want to get through a couple more of these points before we run out of time. Guiding students to solve their own problems. So here's what I mean. A lot of times students will come to us and they want us to solve their problems for them, right? Whether it's interpersonal issues, so-and-so did this, I'm mad at this, my friend did this to me, or it's academic things, right? I don't get this. I don't, or I have a basketball, this is a common one, I have a basketball game tonight. I can't do this. They come to us to solve all of their problems. I can't find this. I lost my homework, whatever it is, right? They come to us to solve their problems. And a lot of times we want to solve their problems for them. I think it's just ingrained in us, right? We're teachers. We're there to help. But we have to be careful, because if we solve all their problems for them, we're not helping them learn how to solve their own. So this is a strategy taught by Love and Logic, and I love it, about how to guide students to solve their own problems. So let's say a student comes to you. We'll use the example of a student that has a basketball game tonight. So they're worried, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Cardamus, I have a basketball game tonight. I don't think I'm going to have time to do this. Start with empathy. Oh, that's tough. Next. What are you going to do? Do you see how we just, Dr. Lehman always says, keep the tennis ball of life on their side of the court. So they tried to put this problem on you. You gave it right back to them. What are you going to do? That also shows that you believe in them, right? You can figure this out. Well, you might get a blank stare or a shrug, or I don't know. So you could ask, well, would you like to hear what others have tried? Now, suggesting what others have tried just works so much better than saying, here's some things you could do. Because when you say, here's some things you could do, like the students just want to dismiss them, right? I mean, this happens with my kids all the time too, right? Here's some ideas. No, they're all horrible. But when you say instead, would you like to hear what others have tried? Then they're a little more open to that. So then you give 2 to 3 examples. Now, the point here is not to come up with the perfect solution. It's just to demonstrate the process of thinking through possible solutions. So you might say, well, some students try to find a time during the day to do it, like lunch or study hall. Some students might work on it at the bus. Some students might set their alarm clock early the next day and get up early and finish an assignment. That's how some people handle an assignment when they have a basketball game that night. How would those work for you? Here's the thing, though. At this point, the student may like one of these ideas. They may not like any of them. It's not your job to find them the solution, remember? It was your job just to demonstrate this process. So you end by saying, man, I wish you success. Let me know how it goes. That's it. You gave it back to them. You gave them some tools to help them out, but it's on them. Because honestly, and this, I'm just excited to see you guys try this out, because how often do we try to solve the students' problems, and it backfires? They don't like any of our ideas, even though they're all perfectly great ideas, right? And it doesn't help them build the skill. So this really helps them to take ownership. And of course, adjust it to their age. Now, what happens if they come in the next day and they had a basketball game and they chose not to do their homework after all? Well, you let the natural consequences teach. The project isn't done. Whatever happens, happens. You enforce the natural consequence. You don't bail them out. Hopefully they learn, and hopefully next time they're better equipped to solve the problem. Does that make sense? Okay, one more strategy under here is helping our students set and reach goals. So this can be really exciting. And this is something where when you're the younger your students are, or the newer this process is, the more involved you're going to be. But the older your students are, and the more you practice this, the more you can turn over this process to the students, and the more they can own it themselves. And we talk way more about both guiding to solve problems and this in Beyond Classroom Management. So these strategies are actually from the Leader in Me. So this process. So the first thing you want to do as you're teaching your students how to set goals is make sure that they are specific and realistic. So you want your goal to be something like, you're going to go from here to here by this date. We're going to take your reading level. I'm going to get my reading score up from this to this by this date. Or I'm going to go from having 20 late homeworks to just 5 late homeworks in this quarter or whatever it is, right? It's specific, it's clear. Then step 2, you translate that goal into action steps, just a couple that you can actually do. So what's something we're actually going to do to make this, to get us on the road to meeting this goal? It just starts out with a couple and then you can continue to reevaluate them, right? So some action steps to start off. Step 3, you want to track their progress. They need a way to track their own progress. So you need to have some type of way to keep track of how they're doing, whether it's weekly or daily, whatever makes sense for the goal. And then you need regular accountability. So it might be with you if you have a self-contained classroom. If you have 100 students, maybe they have peers, maybe they have little small groups where they check in with each other once a week. You know, the first 5 minutes on Friday, you check in with your partner and you share your goals, right? And they're writing their own action steps. So that regular accountability is just a check-in to see how things are going, to see how the action steps are going, to see if they need to be adjusted. So it's really exciting. Do any of you guys do this type of goal setting with your students? I think it's very powerful to see students learning how to set their own goals and be motivated by their own goals. Like I said, you're going to be heavily involved in the beginning of this, and then over time, they can own it more and more. Okay, this was a lot of strategies there as well. So let's hear what's one change. Once again, remember our goal here is to have a whole lot of ideas, but to pick out your favorites to actually do sooner versus later, right? And then you can have a whole list to try later on. So what's one change you would like to make to help students take responsibility for their own learning and action? Which of these resonated most with you? Okay, I know we've got a few questions. If you have questions, keep asking them. We're going to mark them, and we're going to get to the Q&A here in a minute, but we've got one more step first. Oh, I love hearing these things. Let natural consequences teach, guide students to solve their own problems, tracking progress. Yeah, these are great takeaways. Okay, by the way, there's so many more things that we could have talked about so far. We could talk about a restorative approach to discipline, teaching social emotional habits and skills for success. We didn't even get to what to do with unmotivated students, but we are running out of time on this training. So we're going to move on to step 5. Maybe we hopefully there's just so much more that we could get to, but I hope you're coming away with some good strategies. Step 5, because of that fact, because there's so much to this topic, it's really something that we never reach the summit and have conquered, right? Step 5 is possibly the most important step on this training tonight. And that is to make a plan for continuous improvement. So what I mean is, I've said this already, there are so many strategies to try. I gave you a ton of strategies tonight. There's no way you could implement all of them starting this week, right? And I only scratched the surface of all the strategies that are out there. Here's the thing though, each one you try, each one you implement will make a difference, will incrementally take your classroom to that next level, help make students be more engaged, more focused, more responsible, more respectful. However, each strategy individually will help, but they are more powerful when you start stacking them on top of each other. But that doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, there's no way if you go in tomorrow and try to implement everything we talked about today, much less all the other strategies we didn't talk about, you would be completely overwhelmed. It would just not work, right? So the goal is to continue to gradually stack strategies, to walk away from today with 2 or 3 things you want to try and implement them this week or next week. And then to say, I'm going to come back and add another strategy or 2 in April, and maybe 1 or 2 more in May. And then over the summer, I'm going to pick, 5, 3 or 4, and I'm going to implement those. And I'm just going to keep coming back to this and continue to stack these strategies on top of each other. And over time, you're going to find your students more and more engaged, more and more focused, more and more respectful, and you're going to be enjoying it. And your students are going to be enjoying it more and more. But here's the question. First of all, how do you know what strategies to implement, right? I shared a bunch here, but there's way more. How do you know what strategies to pick? And maybe more problematic, how do we not lose sight of this goal in all the busyness, right? So if the key is to continually stack strategies to keep coming back to this, month after month, or even year after year, you can take a slower approach. How do we not lose sight of this, right? How do we keep it top of mind? Well, we need a plan, and I'm going to suggest 2 different options of how to do that. First, you can make your own plan. So you can start this tonight or tomorrow after this training and just list out all the strategies you want to try. Make a list and then come up with some type of system to revisit them. Maybe you put a reminder in your calendar, first Tuesday of every month, I'm going to stop and revisit my list and see what I want to try. And then regularly search for new ideas, right? Follow blogs, hop on Pinterest, listen to our podcast, and just every time you see a new idea, you add it to the list and you revisit it. So that's one option. Make your own plan. Or you could also let us guide you in Beyond Classroom Management. Beyond Classroom Management is our brand new course that provides a workable plan to help you earn your students' respect, increase engagement, build community, help students take responsibility, and so much more. All of the strategies that we talked about tonight and so many more that we didn't get time to talk about are in one place and in way more detail than we had time for tonight. We have a whole module on morning meetings. We talk about short-term recovery, which is a genius way to deal with those students that are always disrupting your class, to keep them from ruining your classroom environment. We talk way more about how to incorporate engaging activities into your class, how to develop student leadership, how to teach skills, those social, those emotional, those communication skills needed for success. We talk about a restorative approach to discipline, what to do with challenging parents, which we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, and so much more. We make it as easy to implement as possible. You can binge watch or you can spread it out. You don't lose access. So you can take it as fast or as slow as you'd like. We help you throughout the course. With the way the workbooks are set up, we help you pick the best strategies to try now and develop a list to save for later. We help you organize your ideas so that you can easily revisit them in the future. And by the way, the notes are already taken for you. That way you can watch these videos while you're cooking, cleaning, working in your room. You don't have to be glued to the screen taking notes like we were tonight. The notes are already taken for you in Beyond Classroom Management. So this is just, if you're wondering who is this for, it's designed for grades K through 12. So it takes, just like we did tonight, broad principles and then applies them to various grade levels. It is designed for those that already have a basic control of your class. So if you don't have a basic level of control, this course is great, but I'd recommend starting with Classroom Management 101 first, which I can give you the link for in a minute. It's for those who want to build respect and responsibility and want your students to be more engaged. Bonuses include our 5-day Classroom Management tune-up, printable reminder cards that you can print and help remember some of the key principles. And if you are a Christian teacher, there's bonus lessons. You can skip them or you can do them that help incorporate a spiritual application and help think things through from a spiritual standpoint. There's also just a lot of extra bonuses, like, for example, our logic puzzle activity template is a fun activity that's already created for you that you can use in your classroom. Now, if you join us tonight, these are extra fast action bonuses. These bonuses are there all the time, but these fast action bonuses, if you enroll tonight, you'll also get a copy of my Take Heart and Teach ebook. You'll also get our 50 procedures that will save your sanity training. It's 50 particular procedures that will help your classroom run more smoothly. And you'll also be entered to win a half-hour coaching session with me. So one person that enrolls tonight will win the coaching session. You get all 6 modules, the printable manual, lifetime access to the course, all the bonuses, as well as a certificate of completion that you can hopefully submit and get PD credit for, and access to the community. Normally, this costs $119, but we are currently offering pay what you can afford pricing because we want you to be able to get access to this. And I know that cost can sometimes be a factor. So that means you can choose the amount you can afford. If you can afford $100, you use coupon code AFFORD100. If you can afford $75, you use code AFFORD75. If you can only afford $50, you can go all the way down to $50. That's more than half off, and just use the code AFFORD50. We also have payment plans available, and there is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you don't have to worry. You can get in there, try it out. If for some reason it's not what you expected, we have very few people take us up on their guarantee, but we're happy to do it if it doesn't meet your expectations. You don't have to worry about that. So if you'd like to join us, you simply click the Join Now button over on the side where you see Get the Full Plan Beyond Classroom Management. Click Join Now, and it will take you over to the information page, and you can get more details over there. All right, we are going to answer your questions. So if you have questions that we have not gotten to yet, please go ahead and ask them now. While you're writing your questions down, just wanted to answer real quickly a question for you. If you are saying, man, I need help with basic level of control, I would recommend starting with Classroom Management 101. And you can get both of them right now at pay what you can afford pricing. So Classroom Management 101, if you go to teachfortheheart.com/CM101 sale, you can check that one out. Or you can go to if you hit the Join Now button on Beyond Classroom Management, you can scroll down and there's a section about it there as well. Okay. All right, let's see here. Questions. Lisa asked, is this the same thing you offered during last night's webinar? I already joined yesterday. Last night, we talked about Classroom Management 101. So this is a different course. So this is actually the sequel to Classroom Management 101, and they work great together. Classroom Management 101 helps you build the foundation. Beyond Classroom Management helps you take everything to the next level, and it focuses more on the respect, the responsibility, the engagement. Welcome those of you that are joining us. Welcome to Elizabeth and Peggy, and I'm refreshing my screen. Who else is joining us? Okay, it's refreshing. Welcome to Carrie and Connolly, and let's see who else. Yes, so glad to have you guys here. That's awesome. Okay, questions. All right, actually, I will say, as I'm about to answer questions, I was hoping to have a little bit of more time before 9:30, but it is 9:30. So I understand if you need to, I said it would try to be around an hour. So if you need to get off now, I totally understand, but I do want to stop and stay on here and answer some more questions if possible. So let's see here. Mary asks, do you recommend completing CM 101 before Beyond Classroom Management? This depends on you. If you feel like, man, I'm still kind of struggling with control, I feel like my classroom's a little bit chaotic, then yes, Classroom Management 101 first, then Beyond Classroom Management. If you feel like, you know what, honestly, I kind of got Classroom Management down, I want the engagement, I want like the things we talked about tonight, then you can jump right into Beyond Classroom Management. Renee asked, for students' goals, there's some examples of how to set up regular accountability for students. It's going to depend on your student's age and how used they are to the process. So if your students are younger, you're going to need to be more involved, and maybe you could even get parent volunteers to come in once a week and meet with students so that it's not all on you. If your students are older, they can do more peer accountability with each other, or you could maybe pick out just a couple of students that you work with. So I don't know if is that the question of what you're asking. And once again, on that accountability calls, you're just basically reviewing, okay, what was the goal? Did you take your action steps? Do we have the same action steps, or do we want to create new ones? How are we tracking? Just keeping it front of mind. Okay, Debbie asked, is this bundleable with 101? Any savings for buying both? We do have a bundle price, but the bundled price I think is $197, and so the pay what you can afford pricing is way more better. So both of them are available right now at pay what you can afford pricing. So you can get them for $50 each. So that's kind of that is the best deal we offer all year. So hopefully that is helpful for you. Welcome to Julie and Stacy and Cindy and Denise and Elizabeth. So glad to have you in Beyond Classroom Management. That's awesome. Okay, what other questions we have? Okay, I'm not sure if I should have classroom management at the moment. Would you offer this later in the year? Megan, I'm assuming, are you asking about Classroom Management 101? So these courses are offered year round. You can get them anytime, but the special pay what you can afford pricing will be available for about a week and a half. And I'll follow up with you via email and let you know when it's about to end. But yes, so you can get them anytime, but if you're interested, I do recommend grabbing them now. This is the best price that we're going to we only offer this typically twice a year. We offer it now and we'll offer it again around back to school. But by then you're already into back to school and it's a little hectic. So if you're thinking, man, I'd like to do this over the summer, this is a great time to buy. You can get started and you can finish it anytime that you'd like. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Sharon saying it's not letting me add both courses to the same order. Sharon, if you go ahead and enroll in Beyond Classroom Management, as soon as you enroll, it will give you an option to add on Classroom Management 101 at the pay what you can afford pricing. So you can just add it on, or you can also just head to, if that doesn't work out, you can go to academy.teachfortheheart.com, academy.teachfortheheart.com, and you can just enroll in them each separately if you'd like. The coupon codes are the same for both courses, so they're the same. Susan asks, what is a natural consequence for not plugging in Chromebooks correctly? I've tried whole class reminders with a funny video. I just created a new Chromebook checkout list to keep track of infractions. Well, it's a little bit hard to answer this because I'm not sure exactly how this works in your class. Okay, so not plugging them in correctly, if that means they don't get charged, well, then they don't have a Chromebook for that day and they have to do whatever it is by hand. But if you're saying it's just like chaotic, like it's causing a problem, maybe the people that don't do it have to come after school and fix it for you. You know what I mean? Maybe it's something like that. We talk about this more in Beyond Classroom Management, but there is this concept that kind of is like a cure-all for anything you don't know what a logical consequence would be. It's called the energy drain. So the idea is if a student is doing something that drains your energy, such as plugging in Chromebooks wrong that you have to go back and fix, they've drained their energy. Oh, this is so sad. You've drained my energy. You need to be something to put it back in. And you can have a list of classroom things that students can do to replace your energy. And we go through a whole bunch of ideas in Beyond Classroom Management, but it could be cleaning the room. It could be organizing papers. Like you just come up with a list of things that students would do. So that's another thing that you can try. Let's see. We will have a replay available. Some of you are saying I didn't catch everything. There'll be a replay available. You can go through the whole training again. We'll send out the link tomorrow. We'll make sure you get that. Let's see. So yeah, same thing, Denise. Yes, you can rewatch the whole thing. Oh, a certificate. I'm so sorry. Yes, here it is. Your certificate of attendance is at teachfortheheart.com/certificate2. If you head there, you can download a certificate of completion of attendance. You can fill it out and hopefully submit it for some credit. Oh, hold on. People are joining and I'm not welcoming you. Let me see who all it is that's been joining us. It's not refreshing. Welcome to Catherine and Levon and Melanie and Nicole and Linda and Jessica and Janelle, Marcia, Ashlyn, Stacy, Denise. I'm sorry if I missed you. It's coming in kind of fast. Welcome to all of you. So glad to have you. Okay. Okay, yes, we can. Okay, a lot of these about the replay. Yes, you can come and listen to it again. I don't currently have the slides. If that's really important to you, if you want to email us at linda@teachfortheheart.com, if I'm able to assemble them, I might be able to get them for you. Linda@teachfortheheart.com. So Jennifer, same thing. I have a specific question that you want to ask privately. You can email us at linda@teachfortheheart.com. I'll be honest, I was just in the email and it's a little bit crazy in there. So please be patient with us, but we'll definitely get back to everybody. Okay. All right. Like I said, I do want to make sure I'm answering everyone's questions. So at this point, if you have a question that you've asked that I haven't answered yet, it's probably fallen way down in the chat box. So if you would ask it one more time, I'm going to try to answer kind of all these lingering questions. Those of you that have stuck with us this whole time, you deserve to get your questions answered. So let's see here. Okay, the certificate is at teachfortheheart.com/certificate2. I think it's showing on the screen right now. Okay. Well, I get the extras if I purchase the combo. Yes. Yes. If you enroll in either, if you are enrolling in the combo, you definitely still get all the extra bonuses. Absolutely, for sure. If you're choosing Classroom Management 101 instead of Beyond Classroom Management, I can still get you the bonuses, but you'll need to email me and request those because it won't happen automatically. And all the bonuses should go out tomorrow. Okay, let's see. Any final questions? What do you do with parents who make excuses instead of allowing natural consequences for their child? Yeah, as I said, we have a whole section on parents and Beyond Classroom Management. Excuse me. The biggest key here is, I think, to remember that empathy plus accountability. You want to use that with the parents too. You want to be understanding. But sometimes part of our job as teachers is actually to help parents, to kind of train parents a little bit. And you have to do this the right way because they are the parent, right? We're just the teacher. But sometimes we can help talk about them. It really helps to start with realizing we're on the same team and talk about them with it. Hey, we both want what's best for Melvin. One of the things that I really care about with Melvin is that he learns responsibility. And so these I have this set up to help him learn that. And I know it's disappointing that he didn't get the A that he was hoping for, but I really think he's going to be better served, by getting the grade that he earned and learning from that. I know it's really going to help him in life. So sometimes you just need to go there. And I think in the end, we also have to realize parents aren't always going to be thrilled. So check with your administration, make sure you're in agreement. But always be understanding to parents, never get defensive, but don't feel like you have to back down just because the parent disagrees. Is that helpful? Hopefully that's helpful. Can I rewatch the workshop? Absolutely. Actually, we will have a replay and we will send it out tomorrow. I believe it's all working. So Lord willing, it should go out tomorrow. Oh, welcome to Beyond Classroom Management. Welcome to Cammie and Anne. Welcome to Ashlyn to Teach Uplifted. Welcome to Michelle and Barbara and Kathy and Christy and Leon and Kathy and Melanie. So glad to have all of you guys. Cammie. Okay, remaining questions. Is there a resource for reaching the unmotivated student? Okay, yeah, we have a whole section on this in Beyond Classroom Management. One of the key things, I will give you one strategy right here, though, is to try to look at what is underneath. So in other words, a lot of times we see on the top, we just see the apathy, but there's something going on underneath that, right? There's either some lack of confidence. It could be a lot of things, right? Something's going on underneath. And so what we really need to do is we need to figure out what's going on underneath to help that. And so, like I said, we talk way more about this within the course, but trying to develop a relationship with that student, just continuing to encourage them, not necessarily making a huge fuss out of it. If they're in your class and they're not causing a disruption, they're just not working, you might then, instead of trying to force them to work, it's sometimes more effective to just stop by and say, let me know how I can help. Can I help you? And just offering help and letting them know that you're there. But when we try to force them to work against their will, sometimes it just causes more problems. Once again, let the natural consequences teach. If they don't do the assignment and they get a 0, let the grade be what the grade is, right? So don't bail them out. Let the natural consequences teach. Work with them, try to find out what's going on, build the relationship, use the 2x10. So there's like a lot of strategies that work together for unmotivated students. And that's why I said I can't, like, we talk about it way more within the program, but hopefully that gives you a few ideas. Okay. Once again, trying to answer these final questions. How do you handle students that refuse to do anything? Had a parent teacher conference but did not resolve the issues. Okay, so I kind of just talked about that, right? Rather than forcing it, just let the natural consequences teach. And it maybe you might need to talk with administration about that ahead of time. You know, what's going to happen here. Let the natural consequences teach, continue to offer help, continue to build a relationship, kind of put all that together. Welcome, those of you that have joined us in the meantime. Welcome to Matthew and Sandy, and again to Dawn and to Charlotte. So glad to have you guys. Awesome. Okay, if you're having trouble with the certificate, sometimes we get a lot of hits all at the same time. The server has just a little bit of trouble. Maybe try it one more time. teachfortheheart.com/certificate2. It'll be there again tomorrow. There should be a button to download it, and then it should show up, and you should have it. All classes participate in morning circle meetings. However, there's a great deal of fighting in our 4th grade classes. Do you have any suggestions? I'm not sure if you're saying there's fighting during the meeting or fighting elsewhere. I think this is a combination. We talked about this some last night on the training, between training, teaching the skills, and then dealing with discipline issues. So it's like they need to go hand in hand. So if there's a lot of fighting, there needs to be clearly taught, how do we deal with this? What do we do when we're upset with someone? How do we handle that, right? A lot of students, they don't have the tools to correctly handle their disagreements. So we need to actively teach that. How do we handle disagreements? So there's just focusing on the training aspect. Once you're where you know students have the tools, if they're refusing to use the tools that they have, that's a discipline issue, right? Then that's where there might need to be some discipline brought into the situation and some consequences. If they have the tools, if you've practiced, if you've worked with them and they're kind of refusing, then there might need to be some consequences kind of putting them together. Okay. It's getting late, but I do want to make sure we can join, get everything figured out. Debbie's saying, I can't join because I already have an account. What do I do? Debbie, you should be able to log into your account and then join. If that's not working, send us an email at linda@teachfortheheart.com and we'll help you get set up. But it's probably just wanting you to log in, which is a pain. If you can't remember your password, I know it might ask you to reset it. But once you log in, then you can go up to all courses and you can enroll and use the same coupon codes. So that's what I would recommend there. Shiska is asking, is this session over? Yeah, we're just doing the Q&A at the end. So I'm sorry you missed it. We are going to have a replay available here in just a little bit. Okay. All right. Any final questions? Just check in for these final ones. How can I deal with students who are intent on disruptions or attention-seeking behavior? Okay, so we talk about we give a strategy for this in Beyond Classroom Management called short-term. I think it's called short-term recovery, and it's from Love and Logic. I'll share it just in brief. We go into way more detail to it in the course. In that strategy, basically what you do is you partner with another teacher or with someone in the office to have a short-term recovery location. And so there's a location where you're going to send that student if they're being disruptive. Now, of course, first you go by and, you kind of give them a warning, right? You'd go by and say, hey, are you going to be able to stay? I hope you can stay. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that correctly. You go to the student and maybe whisper quietly to them, hey, I hope that you're able to stay, that you choose to stop being disruptive so that you can stay in class. But if they continue to be disruptive, you send them to the other teacher. And all they do in the other room, they don't do anything. They just sit. And the goal is for them to come back as possible. So you'd go to them and say, hey, there's a seat waiting for you in Mrs. So-and-so's room. I hope as soon as you're ready to come back and focus, I hope you're back soon. Come back quickly. And And so that strategy, basically, you're removing the student, you're preserving the learning environment for everyone else, and you're encouraging them to come back as soon as possible. Okay, that was just a shell of it. There's obviously way more to making that strategy work well, which we get into, and I don't think we have time to cover in detail here. But you can also, if you search short-term recovery, love, and logic, you might find information about it. Like I said, we talk about it way more in the course. How can I get students motivated if no real grades can be applied? So that is a challenge if you don't have grades, and so you don't have that logical consequence available to you. That does present a problem. But what I would do is focus more then on that section of today's training where we talked about making things engaging. Focus on making the activities and the practice and the lectures something where students want to be involved, right? Where it's pulling them in there. Jennifer asks, is there a coupon code for the bundle? Oh, you know what? I'm assuming you're saying you're actually like on the bundle page. You know what? The coupon codes actually don't work with the bundle. So what you want to do is just enroll in them separately. Or actually, if you enroll in Beyond Classroom Management, then as soon as you finish enrollment, it'll give you an option to add on the other one. Also at pay what you can afford pricing. So yeah, I didn't want to create coupons for the bundle. I thought it might get too confusing. So if you just add them on separately, it's like a create your own bundle, basically. I hope that makes sense. If you run into trouble, just email us at linda@teachfortheheart.com. Okay, Debbie, looks like you're having trouble here. Can you send me an email at linda@teachfortheheart.com so I can look up your account by your email, and we'll definitely make sure I'll check and see if I'll check it out for you as soon as we're off here tonight and make sure we get you in. Okay, you guys, thank you so much. It was so great being with you today. If you are still trying to get into the course, I'm going to give you, we're not going to send out the bonuses till tomorrow morning. So if you need a few more minutes to get everything worked out, you'll still be eligible for those special bonuses and you'll be good to go. So don't worry, you have a few more minutes. Speaking of which, welcome to Debbie and Chrissy and Betty and Monica and Charlotte and Dawn. So glad to have you guys. If you have any other questions, if there's a question I didn't answer for you, please just send us an email at linda@teachfortheheart.com and we will get it resolved for you. Like I said, it might not all be tonight. It's getting late, but we will definitely get back to you and make sure everything is resolved. If you have any lingering questions, please let us know. Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed it and have a good night.